What do you get when you combine simplified practice marketing, proven ROI strategy, and Van skate shoes? You get Mark Thackeray, of course. So lace up, grab your green smoothie, and get ready, because this is Dental Marketing Secrets. And this is Mark.
Hello and welcome, my friends, to episode number 8 of the Dental Marketing Secrets podcast, where we provide actionable tips that you can take and apply immediately to grow your practice, to serve more patients, and to leave a greater impact in the community. That is what it's all about, my friends. My name is Mark Thackeray, and as always, I am so stoked to be here with you in this very moment on another fine, glorious day. Wherever you are and however you may be listening, thank you for spending your time on Dental Marketing Secrets. It will be time well spent, I can tell you that. In today's episode, I am joined by a very special guest, and he is going to answer this commonly asked question. Is direct mail dead? Is it finally dead? In 2019, is it still valid? Travis Lee joins me in today's episode. He's the founder of 3D Mail and an internationally known expert in creating direct mail campaigns that generate positive returns of anywhere from 200% to 3,500% for his clients. In this interview, Travis reveals why some of the largest digital companies like Google rely on direct mail, how you can multiply yourself and have a personal one-to-one conversation with a prospective patient without leaving your office and without picking up the phone, and 2 of his go-to campaigns to revive lost patients and acquire new ones. So let's get started. Let's join Travis. Cool. Well, thanks again, Travis, for joining me on the call. Very excited to have you. I've got and for those who don't know, Travis is someone that I've looked up to, and I have actually to mention this to him before, but he's someone I've followed in the past because he has worked with the likes of Dan Kennedy, and Dan Kennedy is one of my mentors from afar, a brilliant marketing mastermind. And Travis is followed in his footsteps in that way. He focuses on direct mail and really direct marketing results, things that provide an ROI for your business. And for those of you who don't know, Travis Lee is he's internationally known as the expert in getting direct mail delivered, opened, and read. As co-founder and president of 3D Mail, he generates huge returns for thousands of businesses each year who use his innovative and effective marketing strategies. His unique yet tested marketing methods have helped add millions of dollars in sales to a wide variety of businesses, from the small end, kitchen table run sole proprietors to national and multinational businesses that are mailing literally millions of pieces of mail every single year. His techniques and strategies move seamlessly between B2B as well as B2C worlds and consistently provide positive returns of 200 to over 3,500% for his clients, which is so cool, so exciting. Like I mentioned, he's the go-to guy to many of the top marketers in the country for 3D mail ideas and implementation, including Dan Kennedy, like I mentioned before, his long list of clients and business ventures, Bill Glazer, Chris Cardell, and literally a whole host of other top marketers throughout the country. He's also a sought after speaker, speaking to thousands of business owners every single year throughout the country. And since 2008, he's created some of the most successful direct mail campaigns specifically designed to give small businesses and entrepreneurs a leg up against the competition. He is the creator of the 3D Mail direct marketing system, through which his company provides specialized direct mail and ready-to-use sales letters to thousands of clients around the world. And when he's not working, Travis loves spending time with his family, his wife Jen, son Carson, and daughter Whitney, and his golden retriever Kona. He loves traveling, snow skiing, camping, boating around the beautiful Pacific Northwest. And I'm going to have to add, he's going to have to come down to Utah and ski in the awesome mountains down here. Is that right?
No joke. We have a trip planned to Park City in February.
Oh, good. It is tremendous down here. I absolutely love it. I've skied other places, but I'm partial. I'm a local here, and so I'm a local.
Yeah, I've actually never skied Salt Lake, so it'll be a lot of fun. I've skied forever. We just have never made it down to Salt Lake, so it'll be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, that's exciting. That is exciting. Well, thank you, Travis, again for taking the time to hop on this podcast. Very excited to have you and really pick your brain and showcase some of the things that are going on with direct mail and what's really working right now. So I got to start with this question, though, because I know a lot of our audience will be asking this because I get it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Why on earth is direct mail right now in 2019? Is it still viable? It seems like it's gone away. So what is your response to that? Why direct mail right now?
Well, in a world that's continually going more and more online, when it comes to what I want to do with my business is we are getting more and more clustered, more and more flustered, more and more overwhelmed with online. So let's take it out of the online world and let's go, or take it off the online world and let's move it to the analog world, or the paper and ink world, if you will. But to be honest with you, there's a lot of reasons why. First off, as a whole, the post office may have a bad rap, but it's not going anywhere, right? And as far as when people think of the post office, they think of the inefficiencies of the retail side of the business, right? Because they got to have post offices, you got to go buy stamps, right? And so when we think of the post office and think of all the horrible things, that's what we think of. But when it comes to their core competency, which is moving something from one side of the country to another for a pre-known price that is constant and consistent in a very, very effective and efficient manner, there's hardly anybody in the world better than them. In fact, there's not, right? So if you could, so when it comes to their core competency, they're great. So that's number one, right? Post office ain't going anywhere. And I've got, I won't bore you guys with too many stats here, but I've just got a handful here that we'll kind of talk about from the latest marketing studies. And the first one is 50% of consumers say they pay more attention to postal mail than email, right? So that's number one. Number two, 62% of consumers say they enjoy checking their mailbox. So when I go speak and give this a similar talk, Mark, I have a show of hands and I say, how many people enjoy checking their inboxes? And it's 0%, right? So 62% say they enjoy checking their mailbox. 65% say they receive too much email. 92% retrieve mail every day, and 77% read and sort it the same day. So those are big numbers there. And then the last one is 59% of executives. So if those of you who have maybe a professional world where you're marketing into, say, you're a orthodontist trying to get referrals from other general dentists and so on and so forth, right? So 59% of executives say they prefer printed resources to online resources. Now, this is not here to bash on online media. Here I am giving a presentation on a podcast over a Zoom interview platform, right? So this is not to say that this is not a bash session on all things internet. That is to say, though, the switch to everything online is way too exaggerated. Those who think it's only the online world and only that in which we live on are ignoring some very simple and basic facts that we know to be true now when it comes to offline marketing. And frankly, the biggest reason why direct mail is still alive and well is there's just not a ton of competition in it anymore because of all the things we've talked about, right? Mm-hmm. So, if you were a dentist doing a Valpak mailer, you might be one of 8 dentists in a local Valpak mailer. Now you might be 1 or 2. And that's just one example, right? That's just one media type of direct mail. When it comes to being in direct mail with your direct competition, say for outside of bot media like a coupon insert thing, there's just less competition, right? So that's that all those reasons why is that when others are doing all this other stuff, oftentimes the overlooked media is the one that can still produce great results for you.
Absolutely. And we'll get into some case studies that talk about that, some that I think you have, and I've got my own too as well, that where I've tested just to see, because that's really one of the biggest things that we all need to be doing in our business is to continue to test and evaluate those results and make changes so that we can optimize what we're doing, right? I mean, but one of the things that really stood out to me that actually Dan Kennedy, I first heard about it from him when he was talking about direct mail, is that it's really unique because it allows you to sell in a vacuum, right? I mean, if you could have the ability to engage a prospect through a mail, or it could be a postcard, it could be a letter, whatever the case may be, now you have their full attention, right? And there's not this... They don't have these tendencies to click on anything else, like if you're on your phone, for example, and you, instead of a Facebook ad where they can just scroll down and go to the news feed and go see what their friends are doing, or go see a different ad, or even, heaven forbid, open up Google and search your competitors with a direct mail campaign, it really gives you that chance to have that private conversation with them. if you're engaging them properly, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. It is one of the few mass media where we can truly have a one-on-one conversation, right? Now, again, to point out, I mean, digital is giving us the ability to do that, right? So now this Zoom conversation, Mark, you and I are 800 miles apart, but with no phones, we're having this conversation. So there are other ways that are inching towards that. But in terms of a way to multiply yourself, right? The ability to have, what I like to compare to hundreds or thousands of salespeople out there beating a path for you, right? That's the kind of sales environment it gives you. It gives you that one-to-one, me talking to you, us having a conversation type of event, which is, as you said, you hit the nail on the head. It's one of the very few environments in which we can do that, save for going door to door, which I don't think most of us can scale any kind of business like that in most cases anymore.
Right. Exactly. So talk to me about this, Travis. Why 3D mail? Okay. So we heard in the intro that you're the owner of 3D Mail Results. Talk to us about 3D mail, what that is, why 3D mail?
Yeah. So when we say 3D mail, we are literally talking three-dimensional mail. So if you think about most of the mail that you get every single day, we've talked about postcards already in our short amount of time. We've talked about letters. We've talked about Valpak. All of that shows up literally flat, right? There is no third dimension to it. Others have called it lumpy mail. Others have called it dimensional mail. 3D mail is our trademarked version of it, right? Those other ones are trademarked as well. But essentially what it is you're doing one of two things. You're either putting something inside of an envelope that gives it a lump, right? And we call these enclosures, right?
Okay.
So I have a few examples here. We've got a boomerang, and it goes into an envelope. And I've got a great story about how we'll use a boomerang later. But we put a boomerang inside of an envelope. So now as soon as someone picks up the letter, they know there's obviously something inside. We use the boomerang to get lost patients back. So we say, we want you back, right? So we send out that letter. And we can talk about that one more later. What else do we have? We've sent little bags of shredded money, right? So these are about the size of a business card, the little bags filled with real money. We actually get this from the Federal Reserve. We have to order it about twice a year from them, and we get hundreds of pounds of it. And as you can imagine, dealing with an entity like the Federal Reserve, some kind that can take, you want to pull your hair out, right? But
yeah.
So anyway, we have these little bags full of shredded money, and we buy them in, like I said, 100, 50 or 75 pound bags, and we buy 24 of them at a time or something like that. And we put them down into little like business card size bags. And this now we'd use, so for a dentist or somebody like that, we would use this for, say, as an end of year use your benefits campaign, right? So you've got your list of people who have have insurance, but they haven't been in yet, so they haven't used it, right? We send them now a little bag of shredded money along with a letter and say, don't waste your money. You've prepaid for this. If you don't use it, you lose it. So we do that kind of campaign. Those are what we call enclosures. Now, the next thing we have are what we call self-mailers, and these are really cool. These things actually don't go inside of anything. They actually mail themselves. So if you want to go, as we're following along, go to 3dmailresults.com. You can see pictures of all this stuff, the number 3 letter D, mailresults.com. So what do I mean by a self-mailer? So I've got one in front of me here. So same idea as the shredded money, but this time we send them a real vinyl bank bag. So if you can imagine in your head, like you remember the cash you used to have to take down to the bank at the end of the day, right? So it's vinyl, it's got a zipper on the top, right? We actually put a letter inside there. Same idea, use it or lose it benefits. That's the promotion we're running. And we actually put the bank bag in the mail just as it is with the mailing label and postage on it. So as you can imagine, somebody receiving that in the mail, it's going to be the only time in their life they're ever going to get a real vinyl bank bag in the mail, right? So imagine what they're going to see and feel and act and, all the things that are going to go on in their head when they get this thing and it shows up in their mailbox. So that's it in a nutshell. Again, 3dmailresults.com. You can kind of follow along as we talk about this. But the bottom line is with the direct mail that we do is it looks and feels different than everything else your patient, your prospect, whomever it is getting at that day, that week, that month, or the year, which is the biggest thing we want to do. We want to get attention. And if we can get attention with any and all of our marketing and advertising, now we've got a chance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the hardest thing nowadays, right? Is we're literally bombarded with 4 to 10,000 different advertising messages every single day.
Yep.
And it's up to us. It's our responsibility to cut, like you said before, cut through the clutter and help them understand what the benefits are for them, right? So any way we can do that, and this is a fantastic way, is by including something that makes this package unusual so that it stands out. It doesn't just get looked over or tossed aside.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we want to do. And it doesn't matter with any kind of advertising or marketing that you're doing, right? I don't care if it's television, radio, I don't care if it's billboards, if you're still in the yellow pages, if you're Facebook and Twitter and Instagramming, I don't care what it is. If people don't stop and pay attention, you don't got a shot, right? And so what we're trying to do here is take a media, direct mail, that we know doesn't have a ton of competition like it once did. There's still a lot of mail being mailed out. There were other stats I could have given you. Mail volume as a whole is up year over year, every year. It has been since 2009, right? Mm-hmm. So we want to – go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say that's the thing. You see companies that are strictly digital companies. I get mailers from Google,
Yep.
for their AdWords. I get mailers, all these companies that you would think only advertise online because that's their bread and butter, but they're utilizing the power of direct mail because of those reasons. Like you said, it's a great way to get attention, but also there's less competition there. Yeah.
It's amazing how many of these digital companies have been some of the world's largest mailers over the years, right? Yeah. CompuPack and HP were giant. Dell were giant mailers to begin with, right? Google is one of the biggest mailers out there. I wear Untuckit shirts, right? That's a brand right. I love. A brand born online, direct to consumer. They send me a catalog about every single month. Right. They are right now running a Christmas campaign, and I'm actually going to write about it in one of my case studies. They have sent me 2 direct mail pieces and 2 emails, all tied together, all delivering a consistent, persistent, and consistent message, right? So even these brands that were born online said, "Why?" And what do they all say? Why can we save you so much money? Because you're going direct to us, and we're all built online, and it's all so seamless and easy.
Right.
Well, Untuckit now has like 32 stores. Right? So I mean, you bring up a great point, right? That's and Google is, again, not to bash online, but if Google AdWords were so good, would Google AdWords need to advertise in mail, or wouldn't right. they just do Google AdWords?
Right, exactly.
Because they know there's people that they cannot reach online, and they know that, so they use it.
Absolutely. And I love that idea of the vinyl bank bag. I actually spent a number of years working as a teller in a bank in college, so I love that idea.
Yeah.
And the fact to get something like that in the mail, oh man, that's got to be so exciting. And really, it really just positions you as someone different, as someone who's thinking not only outside the box, but you're spending time thinking about your customers, or in this case, your patients, right?
Yep. And to use that Untuckit example, right, where they've sent me a couple direct mail pieces, a couple of emails. Well, if all they're doing is marketing to their existing client base, right? They've got a database. Well, you've got a patient database. So to run an end-of-year campaign for people who have not used their benefits, and you know it, and you've got them on record, and if you can pull those addresses out and you can pull those emails out, and maybe for some of the high-value ones, maybe you do, maybe you've got a family of 6. Boy, it'd sure be nice to get that family of 6 in, wouldn't it, right? Maybe you pick up the phone and call them even, right?
Right.
So when you can use all the media at your disposal, and it's one of those things where each one helps the other, right? So because you sent direct mail, your emails are going to get opened more. Because you send emails, your direct mail is going to get looked at more. And it really has this snowball effect, especially within your own patient base, right? Especially if you're just marketing in that little world.
Exactly. And I've seen that a lot with the clients that I work with, where if you take that more strategic approach where it's, you're offering multiple touches through different media channels. It could be email, it could be direct mail, it could be, like you mentioned, some of the more traditional media, it could be the phone call, all those things, right? I mean, it allows you to really build a stronger relationship, because, if you're just using one media, then it breeds contempt. I mean, it's easy to get fed up with just, hey, I get this email every single day. I'm sick and tired of these guys, even though you may have had a good relationship with that company prior to that, but it's just overload.
Mm-hmm. No, you're exactly right. Dan, as you mentioned a couple of times, Dan has one of my favorite phrases of him is one is the worst number in business, one of anything. So one way to get clients, one way to get clients to refer to you. Not a big deal in dentistry, of course, but any one big customer or client, right? You see that more in the B2B space, right? So if you do work for Microsoft and then they cut you off, you're in big trouble, right? But still,
exactly.
it's one of anything. That's what you don't want.
Absolutely. So, okay, tell us, Travis, how did you get this started? What made you get into this in the first place?
Funny question, and I'll keep it relatively brief. But my father started a business. Actually, didn't start it. He took it over as general manager and then later owner. And so he had been a student of Dan Kennedy's forever as well. And so he had used this kind of stuff to grow that business. And that business was a wholesale distribution company. And we sold mainly to small chain and independent retail stores, right? So the independent dog store, the independent menswear store, the independent jeweler, perhaps a small chain, maybe they've got 20 or 30 locations, right? But we used this kind of stuff, right? Shredded money. We used real dollar bills, fake dollar bills, $2 bills. I mean, we've used all this stuff, right? And we got to the point where, we were going into, places like Dan Kennedy's mastermind group and Bill Glazer's mastermind group, and people, would ask us, hey, where do you get these ideas? What do you do? And our answer was, well, we usually go to the dollar store, and if we can find 5,000 of anything that we want, we buy it and we kind of figure out a way to use it, right? And it got to the point where, okay, we had now sourced these things fairly well, and we had so semi-instructive here for some of you, right? We took core competencies of one business and transformed it to another business, right? So we could buy well, we could break bulk, we could buy and hold inventory, and then we could ship it out on a smaller level, right? Straight up distribution business, right? Well, we did that pretty well. And so when people started coming to us and asking where we got it, we said, well, what do you need? What can we find you? And it turned into, this offshoot wholesale distribution business, right? And since then, we've actually sold that business. It sold to the retail stores for a lot of reasons I won't get into, but we kept the direct mail business. And now we've become a full-fledged direct mail business. So we've got what we call Chotskys and 3D mail stuff, right? But then we also do, I think we're going to send close to 3 million postcards this year, right? We're going to send regular letters, right? But so our whole front door is this 3D mail thing, right? So we've got this kind of inch wide, mile deep, if you will, niche that we've carved out for ourselves, right? So I guess some of the marketing lessons there are, what are you good at, and where do those things transform to, and then what little space can you occupy that has a lot of depth to it, right? But that's our kind of our story. Is we used it so effectively that people asked more and more, and we decided to start a business around it, right? So it was kind of nice to have demand built in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and just the fact that you used it yourself, right? It's not theory. It's not anything like that. It's stuff that you've applied, you've done down in the trenches to grow your business. And it's worked so well that you've made that into its own business of itself, to helping other clients, helping other businesses achieve that same type of success. And that's really kind of what the true question shouldn't be. It's not, why direct mail is it should be looking more at, hey, what type of ROI can I generate, right? Isn't that kind of what?
Yeah.
So talk to me about that in terms of, you're looking at direct mail, and we mentioned in the intro, I mean, you're getting great results on these campaigns. So talk about how direct mail and how it generates those type of results.
Yeah, well, so with any kind of marketing, right? If you're doing true direct response marketing, right, and you're counting dollars in and dollars out, by and large, now and we'll talk about some of the exceptions, but by and large, if you don't get enough money to pay for the advertising, then it's not worth doing, right? That's right. So we got to know how many dollars are going in, and going out. Now, having said that, that's what we're really concerned about with all of our marketing, is what's the return on investment, right? Now, that's not to say we don't care about costs. I live in the real world too. I don't have an unlimited funds of money I can go and pull out of the bank, right? So there are real costs to this. But generally speaking, we can know if we spend X amount of dollars on a campaign, we can realistically, without having tremendous success, just with having average or good success, can we get a positive return on that? And there are several different campaigns that we know in a lot of different industries, because I certainly don't work only with dentists, right? But there's a lot of stuff that we know that can have a positive ROI, if not right away, relatively soon. So here's what I mean by that. We're talking maybe about a loss leader, say maybe to get somebody into the chair, right? So it's the gallon of milk in the back of the grocery store, right? Because once we get them in, so we may not make a ton of money on the first visit, right? So I told you about the retail supply company that we had. We had one campaign that we knew worked like gangbusters, but it worked like gangbusters after month 9. And here's what I mean by that. We knew, so we actually, when we were finally able to get somebody to place an order with us, right? We actually lost money on that first order because of what we gave away to get it, right? In terms of the cost of the freebies we were giving away and the specials we were doing and the cost of the direct mail pieces. But we knew that if we could get them to month 9, they would be a positive client every time they order thereafter, right? Mm-hmm. So for us, it wasn't necessarily important to make money right on that first order because we sold a disposable product. We knew that if they remained, so they're retail stores, right? So if they remained in business and if we did our good job of marketing and sales after that first order, we were going to be so far ahead in the long run. It was the ROI was incredible. If you look at our very first direct mail campaign, right? We had one client we could attribute about $1.2 million to alone, right? Now that was over the course of 20 years, right? But the original cost of acquisition was probably $50. Would you spend $50 to get like $1.2 million? I think so, right? So you got to so again, if you're a dentist and you want to get that patient in the chair, right? You've got that cost of acquisition, but well, let's talk about new movers. Mark, you and I talked about this a little bit on the pre-call, right? So one of the things that we know works really darn well for a lot of local healthcare businesses, like dentists, like orthodontists, like chiropractors, like general practice medical doctors, that kind of stuff, like those types of deals. We know that a whole bunch of people, when they move, are going to move those different things, right? They're going to get a new dentist, they're going to get a new optometrist, yada, yada, yada. Well, if we're able to get that person in the chair the first time, and it may cost us $100 to get them in the chair, and they may be only paying us $150 for a new patient visit or something like that, right? Whatever kind of promotion we're running, we're losing money on that person. But if we can get them in every 6 months, and we know that we've got a 5-year value, so we get 10 more visits out of it, every visit after that is a profitable visit, right? So now we got to think in terms of the lifetime value of a client, or in your case, a patient as well, right? One of the things that we oftentimes do is when we do these new movers, we often will target only married people or married people with families. Why do we do that? Because chances are if we get mom or dad in, we're going to get the other one in, or we're going to get the kids in if we want to do children, right? So we actually can multiply our response that way as well. So there's lots of different ways to do it, but you're exactly right. What we want to look at is our return on investment, and it may not be positive on that very first visit, but it'll be positive every time thereafter, and that's where the money is going to be made. As long as you've got something, and by and large, most of the people on this podcast are going to have not a disposable product like I had, but a recurring maintenance product, if you will, that being the patient themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it really requires you to look at your business a little bit more, I wouldn't say scientifically, but just to take a closer look at what you're doing and really understand the numbers behind it, right? I mean, so understanding, okay, what is this patient worth? The first visit, what is it typically worth? Second visit, and like you said, what is that, calculating that lifetime value of a patient, so that now, once you understand that, you know exactly how much you can afford to invest to acquire that patient, right? It's not just this, hey, I'm hoping to make, $15,000 off this one campaign, because that's typically not going to happen. But if you can understand that, hey, if I invest, $5,000 and I generate 100 new patients that end up staying with me for 5 years, the production value of that is going to be it's going to be probably multiples of 10 or 20, that original investment.
And you enunciated that just right. You need to work backwards. You need to say, now, if you've got a brand new practice, you might have to use some industry practice norms, right? But if you've been around for 3, 5, 10 years, you have these numbers. You just need to go look them up, right? What's our average retention? What's our average patient value? Multiply those things to get a lifetime value. What I will often do is then say knock 20 or 30% off of that for budgeting purposes. Just say, hey, we may or may not. Maybe they end up 120% of that, but let's rein in the numbers so let's be real here.
Okay.
Right. And so now maybe it's, and so whatever that number is, that's what I'm willing to be. How much of that am I willing to spend to get a new patient? Right. So if it's $200 a year for 10 years, $2,000, am I willing to spend $200 to get that person in the patient? And if I get that patient in the chair, am I willing to spend $100 of it? Right. And so you're exactly right. You can work backwards to get the number that you need and then spend accordingly on the front end, right? We basically did that every time. We found that a good number for us, again, when we had that retail supply company, because the campaign worked so well, we knew that if we sent out 1,000 letters a month, and we typically did them in 2 batches of 500, that wouldn't put us out too much money on the front end, knowing that 9 months from now, we will now be positive with that person, right? And so now if we look at over a 9-month horizon, we're now, if everything holds to form, by month 10, we're making money on all those from 10 months ago. So we're constantly feeding our own marketing budget, right? With the people we got. So we're kind of on a 9-month lag, if you will. But once 9 months go by, we're feeding that beast and we're feeding that money. And we knew that about 1,000 pieces every month was a great target for us. Now you only know that when you do this for several years, right? So that would be the challenge for you. What can we do for new movers to get people in? What can we do? Maybe we do, more, I don't want to say higher end stuff, but more expensive stuff, bridges and that kind of stuff. So you're doing, you might be targeting an affluent retiree or somebody like that, right? Is there a way, create a campaign now that we can target those people and that we just pay the lost patients that we talked about with the boomerang, the use it or lose it benefits. Once you create these campaigns and you can kind of fine tune them as you go, you're going to know every time I run this campaign, I'm going to get X amount of money, and that means X amount of money now and Y amount of money going forward. And it really does turn into, a pretty simple algebra problem that if I sat down with my 10-year-old son, I could probably explain it to him, right? It's not that difficult, but you got to think about it that way.
Right. And that's the fun math though, I mean, it's the, okay, now we can really take this knowledge, apply it to grow and scale predictably, because now we've looked at the system, we've looked at our process, and I've been proven over a period of time that, hey, this is, in your case, it was 9-month cycle, and if it's a 9-month cycle and this is how many I'm producing because of that or thanks to that, okay, if I just, and like you said, it's kind of the self-feeding process, the self-feeding system. Now you can look at that and scale predictably. That is such an empowering position to be in, because you feel like now it's really left up to you how far you want to take this.
Yep. And that's what you're looking to do as a marketer of your business, is to find, and Dan Kennedy calls it great, I'll steal it from him because I can't think of a better way to put it, these little oil wells, right? And some oil wells, you can dig every month for a new mover. Some oil wells you can only dig once at the end of the year for the use it or lose it campaigns. Right. But you're digging these wells, and based on history, if I target 180 use it or lose it insurance people, I'm going to get X amount of those to come into the office. That's going to result in X amount of business, right? We do a lot of work with auto repair shops, and to a certain degree, you guys are similar in that. An auto repair shop, for them, the oil change is the loss leader, right? They make a few bucks on it, but it's when they get in the habit of continuing to bring their car to you, and now they need that 60,000 mile tune-up. Now they need that 90,000 mile tune-up. Now they need the brakes checked, right? Heaven forbid, we don't want any of our patients to ever have an issue. But when they do, we're there, and now we're those are the times, it's like my guy that I told you who we could trace about $1.5 million to. there was a lot of little orders, right? And then there was one big $100,000 order finally, you know what I mean, right? So you're going to get those too. You got to keep them in your ecosystem. You got to get them in, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we've talked about a number of B2C examples, right, of things that we can do to our existing patients. So a lot of times I get questions from orthodontists specifically. Well, I work B2B, so does this still work in that environment?
Yeah, it's a little funny because my consumer facing patients, or consumer facing companies, my customers, that may work with businesses where, you've got to get attention of a CEO or a CFO or another doctor. And then I've got my B2B guys who say, that may work to consumers because, it's going to their homes. And you know what? We find that it works equally well in both places, right? There are some things to consider, which I'll get to in here in just a second. But by and large, people are people and buyers are buyers. I was talking to a gal this morning on a call similar to this, and she had a great term for it. I'll steal it from her. She called it H to H marketing, human to human. Right? It doesn't matter if you're marketing towards it. If you're an orthodontist or a periodontist and you're marketing to a general dentist, I don't care what it is, there's still a person on the end of that line, not a business, right? There's still a person, right? And really sometimes if you are marketing to those people, so again, if you're an orthodontist trying to get attention from other general practice dentists, you ain't the only one doing that. And his stack of mail is this big, right? So how are you going to get attention? How are you going to get it past the office manager? How are you going to get it past the spouse who is pilfering 90% of the mail before it gets to the doctor anyway, right? How are you going to do that? Well, so in many cases, you've got to do something a little different and a little unique to get to those people, right? But that's the biggest thing is you've just got to be different. If it doesn't get looked at, open, read, listen to, if they delete your email before they open it, I don't care. If they scroll past your Instagram ad before looking at it, none of that matters unless we get eyeballs on it, right? Exactly. So it's the same idea. And in fact, in many cases, I told you we'd cover a couple things. In the B2B space, it oftentimes pays for itself in a multiple times over, right? Because now all these other ways we've been talking about how to go get one more patient. If we're lucky, maybe we get 2 or 3 because we got mom in and now she brings the spouse in and maybe they bring their kid in, right? So we're really talking a 1-to-1 transaction. If you can go and get these people who could send you 3 patients a month, 5 patients a month, 15 patients a month, whatever the number is, well, now you've got a multiple value on there. Right. So again, we're going to play that same game. If I can reasonably expect 1 patient a month for this guy to refer to me, right? Well, that's 12 a year. Let's do the math. Let's make the math nice and easy. Let's say that's 10. Let's say each patient is worth $1,000. That's $12,000. How much of that $12,000 am I willing to give to get in front of a dentist or get in front of an influencer who could refer me a ton of business? Boy, I'd tell you, a whole lot of that 12,000 I'd be willing to give. maybe even all of it if I know my lifetime value. Now, again, there's some of that might be, an orthodontist, you get the money in a shorter period of time, right? Because hopefully they don't come back, right? Exactly. Hopefully. So you got to take that into consideration. But that's a very good point is to think about this strategically, even to your referral partners, right? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And that reminds me, so I had a photography business fresh out of college that I started, and I worked a lot with wedding vendors, right? So I did a lot of wedding photography, and it's very similar to an orthodontist who wants to get referrals from other general dentists. So I was looking to build relationships with other wedding vendors, so coordinators, events or venues, excuse me. Yeah. And so those are the things that I did. I would send them, I would mail them. I did 2 things primarily. One, I'd mail them a newsletter, and I called it something different because I didn't want it to appear like a traditional newsletter that was boring or stale or anything like that. So I called it something different and just made it very entertaining, very fun to look at, mostly visual, just so that I could be in front of them on a regular basis without necessarily picking up the phone and say, hey, do you have any referrals for me? And then the other thing I did was once I worked with them, I would send them some type of 3D mail piece. I remember one particular client. She was a wedding planner up at one of the ski resorts up here at Deer Valley, a very high-end resort, and had been a great referral partner for me. And so I remember once I got to know her, I knew that she was from Louisiana, was a big LSU fan, had a son that was, they loved watching football. And so I got one of those big inflatable, they're like the inflatable football players that you punch and then they pop back up, right? Kind of sand in the bottom. And so I got a big LSU one and I sent it over to her and she was just elated. And she never forgot about that, never forgot about me, and was always a great source of referrals for me. And that, that maybe cost me $50, $100, whatever. But because of that relationship, she probably gave me $20,000 to $50,000, well, probably more like $50,000 worth of business in a short couple of years. So it's an easy way to build and maintain those relationships. And like you said, to stand apart from everyone else. Yep.
You're exactly right. I couldn't, we've been talking about larger numbers. Just the one-off thank you gift that is something tangible is a great way to do this kind of stuff, right? I mean, it's all at its core, it's all relationship marketing, just as you said, right? Can we make somebody comfortable enough to come to our practice, to refer to us? That kind of, if we can make them comfortable to do that, and if we can, and a lot of times if we put a smile on their face because we're sending them a pill ball, or we're sending them a bank bag, or we're sending them a boomerang, or whatever it may be, that's a cool way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a few minutes left here. So let me ask a couple of final questions for you, Travis. So if you were in, let's say you're a dentist, and what are some of the first things that you would try with 3D Mail to generate new business? So, I mean, you mentioned a couple of those ones already, just in terms of the new movers. You mentioned the use it or lose it kind of benefits end of the year campaign. You also mentioned the lost patients campaign. If you were in their position, what would you start with?
So some of the ones we've talked about, the easiest, and this goes for almost any business, I think the easiest, quickest money to test direct mail in general, specifically 3D mail, is with, in your guys' case, a lost patient, but what we would call a lost client campaign, right? Yeah. Go find the list of people who have not been in the practice for 12 months, whatever your cutoff time is, and do a concerted effort to get them back in. And that would go for darn near any business you can think of under the sun, right? Pull them out of your database, right? So that now we can put them, what I like to say is we put them in their own little cocoon, right? So they're going to maybe get a boomerang from us. And then they're going to get an email with a subject line of did you get my boomerang, mate? Right? Something fun, right? Yeah. And now they're going to get and maybe it's a picture of the dentist or the staff, and they're all holding their boomerangs, right? And it's, did you get our boomerang? We sent it to you, and it's because so the gist of this is, dear Mark, we want you back. As you can see, I've enclosed a boomerang into this package. I've done so for two very important reasons. One, I had to get your attention and make sure you saw this, and I thought this was a fun, clever way, and it would make you laugh a little bit. And number two, we haven't seen you in 22 months or 14 months or whatever it is, and we really want you to come back to the family, right? Well, now if you send a letter like that, if you send an email with some kind of mention of the boomerang in the subject line, hopefully that email hits, you can time this pretty darn well, that email hits a few days after the boomerang gets there, right? And now maybe if you do text messaging, or if you do, again, if you want to make the outbound phone calls, I'm sure most of the people on this call that are listening, and if they're in a practice that is doing any kind of proactive sales or marketing, they're making phone call reminders or check-in reminders and that kind of stuff. This now is a great way to use those people, right? So I've got a list of 200 patients that I need to do call reminders to. Where do I even start? Let's start with these 50 that got the boomerang, right? And do that. So that's number one. That's the first one I would do for any and all businesses, right? That's professional practice. I don't care what it is. Everyone has lost patients, lost clients, lost customers. Go out and get them. And now, if I were going to go get new blood, I would do one of two things. I love the new mover idea, right? I didn't get to these stats, but it's something like 68 or 72% of all people who move are going to change a dentist, an optometrist. They're going to, the numbers, are are pretty substantial, right?
Right.
So we know so what I like to do when I have my direct mail is I like to put myself in the best position to win with just having okay stuff. And when I be just an okay list, just an okay offer, right? We're not talking about getting the best copywriters in the world to write our letters, right? That's most of us, we can't afford that. Heck, I can't afford that, right?
Right.
So when we think of direct mail, we have to think what lists are available of people who have a high probability of needing and wanting what I have, right? Well, based on numbers, we know that someone who moves is going to change a whole lot of stuff, and one of them is their primary care dentist, almost always, right? So let's try to go get that person. Let's take this another step up. Let's say we do implant dentistry, right? So now what's a list that I can have maximum success with? Well, it might be an affluent, older person, married. It might be a life event, right? So maybe spouse recently died, spouse recently divorced, right? Something like that.
Right.
But these are all lists that are available now who make up people that are more likely to need my services than just Joe Schmo off the street, right? So if I was a cosmetic dentist, I would be getting a list of all the rich divorcees, right? And that would be who if I was in cosmetic dentistry, you better believe that's the list I'm going to be mailing every month, right? And I don't need to mail a whole lot of them to get one or two patients and pay that thing many, many, many times over, right? So that's what you want to look for. You want to look for who's more susceptible for what I do right now and what list matches up to that. So those are a few of them right there, right? And again, depending on your specialty, there's a litany of them depending on if you're a general dentist or if you do specialty work, that kind of stuff, right? Obviously, for someone who does wisdom teeth extraction or who does orthodontia, braces, that Invisalign, kids entering high school, kids entering their teens, that's a list that you can get, right? So that's what you want to look for.
Right. Well, those are great. Those are great. I've used both of those examples, lost patient campaign, new movers campaign. And I've also done a use it or lose it benefits campaign. Cool. And it's been interesting as I've tested some of those. So let's take that final example with the year-end use your dental benefits campaign. I tested, so a standalone mailer to a portion of the list. And then I just did digital ads served to just a portion of the list. And then I did a combination of the two where they received a mailer plus some type of digital ad. They were served a digital ad during that time frame. And it was so interesting to see that, and this blew me away, but I thought the combination of the two would work the best. But the one that outperformed the others was just the direct mail one by itself. So I got
interesting.
Yeah, not only a higher conversion rate, but the production value was much greater from just the direct mail than from either of the other two options.
Well, and you see, that's interesting that you mentioned the digital stuff too. What's great about, what is great about a lot of and I'll make this relatively short, I know we're short on time. What is great about most of these social media platforms is they really get the idea of micro-targeting like the direct response guys do in the offline world, right? All they've really done is taken David Ogilvy direct response marketing and put it on online. That's all they've really done, right? And so we could take a list of rich recent divorcees, and we can get that mailing list and we can upload it to Facebook or Instagram and we can match them based on their name and address. And now we can serve them two different media, right? So, so there's lots of different ways to skin that cat. It's interesting that you said the standalone direct mail piece worked. I would have thought that the multi-touch approach would work. It just goes to show none of us really know anything. You got to try it. You got to test it, right? Where some of us are making more educated guesses than others, but the bottom line is put it out there, and if it makes money, you do it again.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. Always do what's working. So true. So true. Well, Travis, I just want to say thanks again for taking the time. So many great ideas in here. If you took even just one of those and implemented them, it could mean so much business for your practice, so many new patients, so much production value just through one of these ideas. So I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. Is there where can our listeners find out more about 3D Mail? Where can they, if they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, the best place to go is to get my free book on how to successfully use 3D Mail in your business. It's called The Definitive Guide to 3D Mail, Exploding the Results of Your Direct Mail Advertising. And you can get that at 3dmailresults.com/book. So that's the number 3, the letter D, mailresults.com/book. And it has all different kinds of ideas on letters to use. We give you what's called a swipe file. So we actually give you some of the letters, right? We give you like 46 different letters you can use using 22 of our different items, right? It talks a lot about some of the stuff we talked about today and knowing your numbers. But then that'll also get you our little booklet on how to use this. So you get the book, you get the swipe file, 3dmailresults.com/book. It's completely free. There's no credit card. There's no it's free, but you got to pay $2.99 shipping. None of that. I just need a mailing address. We actually physically mail you a book.
Wow. It's awesome. And that's actually one of the things that I love about you guys, Travis, is that you guys include these sales letters, these templates that people can download and edit or just use straight up as they are already, because that's been a big hang up for a lot of clients, a lot of practices that I've talked to. They don't know how to get that started. So that is a huge resource there, and that's so much value. So yeah, go to that. I've got a copy of that book myself. It has so many things in there. Go there and check that out. But once again, thanks again, Travis, for taking the time to be with us today. And we'll have to have you back on sometime soon. Sounds great, Mark. Thanks for inviting me. You betcha. Have a good one. Yep. That is it, my friends. Thank you for joining us today on Dental Marketing Secrets. If you have any comments, questions, or feedback, I would love to hear from you. Simply email me at markthack@gmail.com. That's MARKT as in Tom, HACK@gmail.com. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a review for this podcast. That would be a tremendous help. And share it with your friends, your peers, and your team. Until next time, my friends, make it a fantastic week.
Did you enjoy this episode of the Dental Marketing Secrets Podcast? Head on over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. And for more proven marketing strategies to grow your practice, visit practicerocket.net.